This is just part of an interview I did with Jay Edson, author of Marcus and Me.
This time I'd like to give some thought to the topic of how we generalize. I will also include a brief comment about how we can then make deductions from the generalizations that we have made. Let me begin with a very concrete example. In the newspaper, as you probably would see in many newspapers almost any day of the week, there's a story about a man who's attempted to rape a woman. And fortunately, the woman, by resisting and calling 911, managed to escape. I'm certainly not saying that women who don't resist when a knife is held at their throat or something of that sort are in any way blameworthy, but this particular woman did resist and she called 911. The person that was attempting to rape her dragged her into his car, was threatening her with a knife, and said if she stopped resisting, she might be able to live. After calling 911 and the police were aware of what was going on, she managed to cause the car to be driven into a ditch, and they got the man and prevented the rape. So it's not an unusual situation. So what should be the reasonable response to a situation of this sort? Well, about 98.9%, according to studies, of rapes are committed by heterosexual men. So we have to look at heterosexual men, I guess. What kind of creature is a heterosexual man? Well, they rape. I mean, we know this. This is it's right here in the newspaper. So probably we should begin to have a lot more laws about dealing with heterosexual men. Maybe we could have, for example, red zones where heterosexual men were not allowed to be, where they couldn't live, where they couldn't wander around and look at things. Obviously, we would not want heterosexual men hanging around areas where women congregate. So we also might want to identify high-risk males when they're in grade school. You know, the little boy who steals a kiss from the classmate of his. Can he be a future rapist? And does something need to be done with him? Should he be put in therapy, sent to a home where he's treated for his heterosexuality? It's not clear. You know, this is a difficult issue. But certainly we would want longer prison terms for heterosexual men for such things as visual aggression, for looking at a woman a little too intensely, for unrequited flirting, for flirting with some woman in the office, say, who really isn't interested in the guy very much, for looking at pictures of nude women. Certainly that's a very serious matter. Uh, and of course we have to consider that action comes out of thoughts and fantasies, and so people should be incarcerated, maybe in mental hospitals, for having wrong thoughts or lurid thoughts. Obviously, you may sense something somewhat absurd in my recommendations here, and I confess that that may be true. Um, but why? Why do we not respond this way? Well, in the first place, laws already exist. It's already against the law to rape people, to drag them into cars against their will, to assault them, and so on. We don't need another set of laws that designates heterosexual males and says it's illegal for these people to do these things. The other problem with this, and a second problem with it, is that people, according to the American tradition at any rate, should not be incarcerated for their thoughts or feelings or fantasies. They should be incarcerated only for acts that are against the law. This is being regularly violated, of course, at this point with civil commitments of accused pedophiles, but that's a door that's open now that we might as well apply to other people, I suppose. If heterosexual men are fantasizing about raping somebody, probably they should be kept in a mental hospital the rest of their lives. The other major problem with this is a logical one. It's a matter of generalization. It seems obvious that you can't take one situation, one person, and generalize to a whole group of people on the basis of that one observation, or even several isolated observations. It's a logical fallacy. It's a misuse of what's called induction. And then you have a generalization that you can make deductions from. Those are called syllogisms. When you make a deduction from a generalization, we can have, for example, this syllogism. You know, George Shagnasty is a man. Some men are rapists. Therefore, George Shagnasty is a rapist. There's a syllogism. Now, again, there's possibly a little logical flaw in that reasoning. But at this point, that kind of generalization and that kind of reasoning is regularly used with maps. If a minor attracted person does something reprehensible, it gets into the newspaper, then the entire group of people who feel any attraction at all for minors is demonized, and there's a call for more and more legislation, more red zones, more longer life sentences, 7 and 8 life sentences, you know, all of this kind of thing. Anytime that one person does something, you cannot generalize about maps from isolated incidents any more than you can generalize about women, or about men, or about blacks, or about any other group of people. So that we're talking really about a logical fallacy. And the question I leave you with is, why is it permissible to apply different rules of logic to maps than we apply to all other groups of people?